Fiji has the third longest barrier reef in the world, and it is one of the most resilient in the world. When other coral reefs around the world have died, these reefs will be able to be used as the seed stock. So they're super, super important. But if we have waste and pollution running off into the ocean, forests cut down for agriculture, mangroves cut down for tourism, and if we have overfishing, we are going to destroy the reef on our own. It doesn't matter what's going on globally.
Jodi Smith spent 2 decades in Hollywood until she hit a glass ceiling and chose to walk away. In Fiji, she transformed a 160-acre farm into an organic operation, earning the nickname the Organic Lady.
But her bigger mission was protecting the coral reef, and she realized finance could be the tool. So she built Matanataki, using capital to help safeguard the Pacific's future.
In the Pacific, entrepreneurship is very nascent. And so we have, I think, this opportunity to create the circumstances we want in order to create the economy we want. We can have direct impact on things at a macroeconomic level. The companies all connect to each other in some way. And the reason why we have them connect to each other is because through that connection, there's this ability to actually have an impact at a landscape and a seascape level. It can feel very, very lonely. We're holding like this little light. And when you find those lights, then the light gets stronger. Together we are Matanataki. The economy is a subset of the ecosystem. We only have an economy because we have a planet.
Welcome back to Catch the Upswing. I'm really excited to have Jodi Smith with me. Jodi, warm welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So Jodi, you have a really unique background from Hollywood all the way to raising a Genderland's Impact Fund in the Pacific. And perhaps just very briefly, in a nutshell, can you tell us how you got from Hollywood to farming to raising one of, or I think the first ever impact fund focused on Genderland's investing in the Pacific?
Yeah, I have a few strange bullets on my CV. Let's see if I can get all of them in a nutshell. So I actually started in the film industry when I was about 18. Actually, before that, I was a photographic assistant. I produced some photo shoots. So I did some photo shoots for Vogue, for Marie Claire, then moved into the film industry. Really wanted to be a cinematographer. And after about 20 years, hit a glass ceiling and realized that the change that I wanted to try and affect in the world was probably best done in another industry.
Wow.
So I gave up what had been a very long career and I went into business. So I come from a very long line of entrepreneurs, going many generations back. And in my own childhood, I was brought up by a textile designer father, by a business entrepreneurial mother, and we were always surrounded by artists and fashion designers and architects. So to me, business was always very creative. So moving into business was not actually a far stretch at all from making Hollywood studio movies. In fact, I think it's even more creative. So, so yes, I became a business developer, business manager. I turned around some companies, and that brought me to where I am today, which is raising this fund. But on the way in the business trajectory, I became Sheep Farmer of the Year, or was nominated to be Sheep Farmer,
of the year. Wow.
In Fiji. And I also have a bullet point on my CV, which is being the yoga teacher to the Olympic gold winning Fiji Rugby Sevens team, which I did in 2016. You see, in Fiji,
Wow.
in Fiji, there's not a lot of people doing a lot of things, so you can become known for doing something quite quickly.
amazing.
So while sheep farming, I also was the only yoga teacher in Fiji, so got to teach this gold medal winning team.
Wow. And I knew that you were also called the organic lady. I knew that story,
Yes.
but I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, so the work that took me to Fiji was turning around an agricultural company, and I had never worked in agriculture before. I'd done many different types of businesses before that, but not agriculture. So there I was on this 160-acre farm beside the ocean, and I had to figure out how to make it profitable and turn it from this 30-year-old farm that had been doing sheep and lemons, and convert it from a chemical farm to an organic farm, and I only
Wow.
had 3 years to do it. So yeah, I became known as the organic lady from that experience. Yeah.
And you made me smile when you said that you hit the glass ceiling in Hollywood, and so you went into the investment industry.
Right.
Which is, I think, at least as male dominated and not an
Maybe
easy
more.
industry for women. And I'm curious, now you are probably the only female fund manager in the whole of the Pacific Islands. What does that mean personally and professionally to you?
So I might not be the only female fund manager in the Pacific. My co-general partner and I are starting to recruit for our team, and we're discovering that there are a few others, which is
Really?
actually really, it's a
Nice.
really nice thing to discover. But there certainly are not as many women fund managers as there are in other regions. But what does it mean to me? I feel like there's an opportunity to do something in the Pacific that hasn't been done before. So I mean, firstly, there's really not a lot of fund management at all.
Right.
And because there are not many women fund managers, there's not many male fund managers, it's almost as though we can create the circumstances that we want for the ecosystem that we're creating. And we're in Europe right now, and I've spent the last week or so here. Before here, I was in Singapore and spending time with other fund managers, and I can really see that we come from completely outside the square. We are doing things very differently, and I'm not sure that anywhere else in the world we could do that. So I think that being in the Pacific as a woman fund manager, it's a very, very unique opportunity to do things differently. I should maybe give some background to us as a team. So none of us really are fund managers. We do have to recruit at least one person who has fund management experience. But none of the core team are fund managers. So like, how on earth did we get here? We saw a need for businesses to have capital and really patient capital. And we saw a need for these entrepreneurs to really be supported, and to, I don't want to say handheld, because they're holding our hand as much as we're holding theirs. But it's very important to, how do I put this? So in the Pacific, entrepreneurship is very, very nascent, and also the economy is quite nascent. And so we have, I think, this opportunity to create the circumstances that we want in order to create the economy that we want. And this is a very, very unique situation. There are things that we're able to do with the companies we're working with where we can have direct impact on things at a macroeconomic level. And I'm not sure anywhere else in the world this is possible. One of our team members, Kanchan, she's from the States, and she often talks about the sense of agency that she has in the Pacific. We can make very small changes and you can see the effect. Whereas that doesn't happen if you're in an economy like America.
Right.
So I think this is very unique for us, and I think we're very, very lucky to have this opportunity, and also because we don't come from the industry, we really can make things the way we would like them to be. And also when we've been going out to investors, we've very much been saying to them, this is the vision that we have, and it's a very, very ambitious vision. We want to create ecosystems and societies that we want to live in, and we want to determine, or we want to contribute to determining what those look like. And there are certain things that we don't want to settle for, and we have the ability to change these things. So essentially, we're able to say to investors, "This is our vision. So if you're aligned with this vision, come and join us." And it seems like this is starting to happen.
And it's truly an incredible opportunity, because it seems to me that on the one hand, there is a necessity to create a fit-for-purpose capital model for the Pacific, and particularly for Fiji, because of the nascent ecosystem, what entrepreneurs really need. And as you say, the impact or the change that you want to see in that ecosystem at all levels, at the micro level all the way to the macro level. At the same time, it's also an opportunity because you don't have something that's set in stone, right? You don't have like a clearly established venture capital system that you have to play by.
Exactly. It's not like this is the way it's always been done, so this is the way you should do it. Where we can, we see what the issues are. I mean, of course there are frameworks that we work with, but if we see that something isn't working, we can quickly adapt, and we can change, we can respond to it. So in this way, it becomes a very, very creative action, a creative activity, and this also is what keeps it very exciting for all of us. I think it's not just at the company level where we're able to have this very kind of visible outcome. It's also creating this world that hopefully other people will be able to join and help us grow.
And so, what is it that Matanataki, the name of your fund and your firm, what is it that is unique? What does fit for purpose capital mean to you for Matanataki, and also in that context of Fiji? Can you describe, the kind of capital you provide, how you work with companies? What's that fit for purpose model that you have developed?
Sure. Maybe I'll give some background about the pipeline development work first. So this is actually where we started. So always when we're introducing ourselves as a team, we say we don't come from this world. We say that we're business. Well, a combination of things. Because we're all the team is all have quite diverse backgrounds, but we're business managers. We turn companies around. We're also artists. We have 2 fine artists on the team. We have a dance major on the team, and we have a landscape architect on the team. So we started what I understand is quite a different way. We started by developing the pipeline, the investment opportunities. I was, because I was known as the organic lady, I was asked to sit on a steering committee for WWF, and the then head of WWF, who's now one of our senior advisors, she was reflecting on the work that WWF had done as an organization, and she realized that WWF needed to engage with the private sector, because I think a lot of organizations, so civil society, the state, private sector, they really work in silos. They don't collaborate at all. And so she had this light bulb moment where she looked at everything that WWF is doing, all of the conservation work, all of the restoration work. She asked herself, why is this getting worse? Why is everything getting worse? And then she realized it's because we need to be speaking to the private sector. So the thesis for Kesaya was, if there's a way to bring investment to the private sector, can private sector be convinced to change the way they do business? And she brought over some consultants from Europe, and they helped map out the drivers of degradation to Fiji's reef. So Fiji has the third longest barrier reef in the world, and it is one of the most resilient in the world. It can withstand very high temperatures, and it can withstand a lot of ocean acidification. So we really want to try and protect this reef. We want to protect the reefs also of the Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea, because these reefs, these corals will be able to survive the higher temperatures, and when other coral reefs around the world have died, these reefs will be able to be used as the seed stock for other reefs that have died. So they're super, super important. But if we have, waste and pollution running off into the ocean, if we have, continual ecosystem destruction, forests cut down for agriculture, mangroves cut down for tourism, and if we have overfishing, we are going to we'll just destroy the reef on our own. It doesn't matter what's going on globally. So this is where the idea was first born. If we can find companies that want to receive the investment, then we have something to invest into, and then there can be this knock-on effect. So this essentially is, I discovered the concept of theory of change only through doing this work. I think in the pure private sector, you never talk about things like theories of change, but you do obviously in this world, particularly the climate world. So the theory of change essentially is that if we bring the right money to the right companies, then we can stop the local threats to the reef. And if we stop those local threats, then the reef has this fighting chance of surviving 2 degree. And it's looking like it's going to be far more than 2 degree warming scenario. So I started going and meeting entrepreneurs. So we knew that waste was I knew waste was a very low-hanging fruit, because when I was speaking to different entrepreneurs in different sectors, I saw that the people in the waste industry, they understood business management a lot more than people who were in, say, agriculture. Agriculture is a lot more fractured, and it's more kind of smallholder, whereas the waste companies were really run as fully fledged businesses, and some of them for quite a long time. So I thought, okay, this makes sense. Let's work with the waste businesses first. Let's develop them. Let's look at what could they become, how could they grow in order to really support the coral reefs. So we had a really fantastic couple of years working with the entrepreneurs very, very closely. And basically when I sat down with them, I said, don't think about money. Don't think about, don't think about what you can and can't do. Just treat it like you're in a dream. Just dream exactly what you want to do, and with this outcome that we want of stopping runoff into the reef. Keep that as the North Star, but with that, just dream what you want this company to be. So we had a couple of years with 3 different waste companies. One is a fertilizer company. Actually, it's a waste transport company. They're basically taking green waste and manure and huge amounts of it, and they're putting it into landfills and dump sites. And this is an incredible resource. This is what fertilizer is made of. This was one company. Then another company, it was a multi-stream recycling company, who for 30 years had been collecting, separating, baling, and exporting recyclables, but not upcycling them in country. And then the third one, which was really the most ambitious, was we knew there was a huge problem in the western side of the country, and this is where all our tourists come. And it's the waste is serviced by these massive open dump sites sitting on mangrove, and they're burnt down every 6 months, and they're sitting right on the edge of the city. And when they catch fire, they burn for weeks and weeks. And then because they're coastal, when the tide comes in, I mean, basically the whole thing lifts. I mean, you walk on them and it moves. And then when the tide goes out, of course, they're taking all the toxins out, and these dump sites have been there for some of them 70 years. And there's all sorts of who knows what in it. And this is near the prime tourist area of Fiji, which not many people know. Certainly tourists don't know it. So several of us got together and said, okay, we know this is a problem. We know that our government is struggling with resources, struggling with capacity. So what can we do in the private sector in order to come up with a solution that serves us as the citizens of the country? And I think where I feel very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing in the Pacific is because I'm from there. And because I'm not coming in from the outside going, here's something that needs to be fixed, or I'm not coming in from the outside as a fund manager going, oh, what company can I find that could have some impact? It's like I, with my team, with all the entrepreneurs, with all the companies, this is our daily lived experience. We live not having good waste management systems. We live with, knowing that our reefs are dying. So this opportunity for us is to actually and I'm really now telling the backstory when I say it's the opportunity for us to create the society, create the environment, create the economy that we want. Okay, yes, our fund that we're raising, and we are still raising it, it's very small, but it is the first step in moving towards creating the world that we want to live in.
And what I find really striking about your story is, as you say, you are from Fiji and your generations before you have lived in Fiji, right? And conducted different types of business. And you've mentioned to me in personal conversations how, for example, your grandfather was already, kind of, for example, working with
sea cucumber.
Right?
Yeah,
and so you also have that. It's kind of almost like a generational task,
yes.
or you have that experience of what's not going well in terms of reef protection and so on. And now it's an opportunity to
get it right.
And so I think what's also inspiring is the whole idea of raising a fund. You're not the typical fund manager who said, oh, I want to make money and I love investing in startups, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is a solution that you've designed specifically to solve a much, much bigger problem.
Yeah, so it's actually my great-great-grandfather who came to Fiji to trade sea cucumber. So he's Chinese. He was Chinese. And today, the sea cucumber is still exported by Chinese people. There is not yet, although there will be very soon, because we are just about to make a seed investment into an indigenous Itauke Fijian-owned company, and it will be the first one ever where the indigenous people own the entire, it's a vertically integrated. They own everything from the harvesting right the way through to the selling. This has never happened before. For the last 160 years, it has been Chinese people coming to Fiji, buying from local people. And, I often tell the story. So if there are people who are listening to this who know me, you've heard me say this before, but for those who haven't, I tell the story of, if I was to sit like this in a chair, fireside chat with my great-great-grandfather, we would be talking about exactly the same issues, exactly the same challenges, the same problems, because nothing has really changed in terms of the way the sea cucumber is harvested, the way that it's cooked, cleaned, cooked, dried. Yes, okay, there is electricity now. It was done probably coconut husk fired 160 years ago, but more or less it's the same. But
What's the significance of the sea cucumber? So one
for
is
Chinese people?
one is, I guess just like the product itself, but it also plays a specific role in the ocean, right?
It does. Okay, so for people who like to eat it, and I'm not one of them, I'm very un-Chinese in that respect. For Chinese people, there are health benefits. Apparently, it has a lot of collagen in it. I think it's mostly health benefits. It's also highly regarded as a gift that you give people. It's considered not a luxury item, but it's something very, very valuable. So that's what it is for Chinese people. For Japanese people, one of the 3 delicacies of Japan are the guts and the gonads of a sea cucumber. For the ocean, what is important is that they have this unique ability to buffer ocean acidification. I don't know the science behind that, but apparently the more of them you have, the lower your ocean acidification. But also they are the hoovers of the coral reef. So they play this incredibly important ecosystem role.
Is that what they mean to you personally, since you don't like to eat them? Like, what is the significance? Or is it that connection to your great-great-great-grandfather?
So I've come to really love the sea cucumber. So we have actually, it was from 2X we learned this the check-in question. So one of the check-in questions that we have every when we meet either the team or new people, we'll ask check-in question, and one of my favorites is, if you were an animal in the inshore reef or a plant in the inshore reef, what would you be and why?
It's amazing.
So I'm going to ask you in a minute, so you've got a minute to think about it. But for me, it's a sea cucumber. And yes, there's the ancestral connection. Also because of the role that it plays in the reef, but also because it has this really crazy defense mechanism. If it's frightened, it spits out all its internal organs. But it doesn't die. And a couple of months later, it regrows everything. So they are these kind of genius, crazy creatures. Yeah. What would you be if you were a creature on the inshore reef?
Now that you've mentioned the sea cucumber, kind of makes me want to be one. But I've seen so many interesting documentaries, and they're like these tiny little crabs that are cleaning the corals. I mean, there's so many amazing animals. So I'm sure I'm missing the most important one. But what immediately came to mind was like the clownfish, and like this where they live. Like this really nice environment, because I think they also play a special role, don't they?
So I'm not sure of the role they play, but I know that they live with soft coral, and there is a specific soft coral that they live with, and they live in families as well. I was snorkeling a couple of weeks ago in a marine protected area. We had some LPs, some investors come and do on-site due diligence.
It must have been a nice due diligence.
It was great. I think they loved it. We loved it. And we ended up, so we went and did a lot of site visits. We went to open dump sites, really wanted to give them a really kind of deep embedded coal face understanding of what we do. Actually, maybe it's a good moment to mention this. You've talked or you've mentioned earlier, or you've asked earlier, kind of what are we doing that is different? And I think one key point of difference is what we refer to as this thing called an interconnected deal flow. So we are not a fund that invest only into startups or only into growth, or where we can invest across the the stage, the life cycle of a company. So we have startups, we have growth companies, we've got some very mature companies who are wanting to take the business in a different direction. But the companies all connect to each other in some way. And the reason why we have them connect to each other is because through that connection, there's this ability to actually have an impact at a landscape and a seascape level. So, when people talk about systems change, and this is becoming a bit of a buzzword, I'm always keen to understand what people mean when they use that term, because for us, what it means is, okay, we want to see a healthy coral reef. That is the systems change we want. So how do we get to that? So it is by linking, and I'll just give one example of this interconnected deal flow. It's by linking a community-owned startup, which is banning fishing on the inshore reef, because overfishing is a major problem. If you are overfishing, you're not leaving a lot of life to do things like cleaning the coral reef. So they will ban inshore reef fishing, but then they'll be able to fish on the outside of the reef where the fish are sustainable. They will remove invasive sargassum seaweed, and then they will do coral restoration projects, which can be ecotourism. Now, the fish gets sold to a resort. The ecotourism gets sold as experiences. The seaweed gets sold to the fertilizer company. The fertilizer company then turns it into an organic certified fertilizer, the first non-imported fertilizer made in the region. It sells it to sugarcane farmers, and teaches those farmers how to farm in a polyculture, because agricultural runoff from the sugarcane industry is one of the biggest drivers of reef degradation. And then as that fertilizer company grows, it's able to move to the site of the large waste management company, where all sorts of waste are coming, including increased numbers of green waste and manures. The fertilizer company then can scale up its company, and then profits from this company, because it will be owned by the users, it will be owned by the people, can go to paying for coastal restoration projects of the communities who have been doing things like pulling seaweed out. So this is, I think, how we're doing things in a very different way, and how then it all links back to the health of the reef.
Like your interconnected deal flow, as you mentioned, it's quite unconventional, because you're looking across, stages. So from like probably seed to, all the way to growth and even turnaround, etc. But you have like this element of circular economy in there, and you almost have like this whole business value chain reflected. So there are like so many different valuable concepts in there. And I guess that also means you and your team need to have a lot of expertise in a way, but I guess what anchors you is this deep understanding of the ecosystem in Fiji, which all brings it kind of back together, right?
We're definitely generalists, or should I say we're jack of all trades. We all know a little bit about a lot, but I don't think any of us are really deep experts, except for about being experts about knowing a lot of things, but
and
not very deeply.
I think that's probably also an understatement. So for the investors who are doing due diligence on you, I would jump in that due diligence and say, no, actually, I think you know a lot. I think you know a lot, because I think also what that looks like in Fiji is quite distinct, right? And so even if perhaps you have done, I don't know, have developed that expertise in another market, it's not quite the same. So
yeah, I mean, maybe I'm being a little unkind, and for sure the rest of my team will say that I'm very hard on myself and sometimes hard on them. We do need to know a lot about a lot of things. I mean, we were asked in a due diligence meeting the other day, how do you bring the expertise to what you're doing, because waste is very different to agriculture, is very different to fisheries, is very different to tourism. It feels to me like there is a thread that runs through all of the companies, and that thread think that thread is really a thread of values and principles, but it's also a thread of systems. So, and when I say systems, I'm talking about the practical operational systems that you need to have in a company. So I think what we are very good at, I think, is being able to really support the entrepreneurs to set up the operational systems that their companies need in order to manage the growth that they're going to face, because most of these companies have not seen investment before. They've bootstrapped. Yes, some of them, in fact, quite a few of them have had bank debt, but that money from the bank usually has to be used on very conservative things, whereas the patient risk capital will bring is going to enable them to be able to do the things that they've dreamed of, the things that, right in the beginning of our conversation, I was talking about, bringing in recycling technology that we've never had in the region before, creating fertilizers that we've never made in our country before. We're essentially building the manufacturing base of our country. And we're in some way contributing to almost a green and circular industrialization of the country. And the skill set for us is to know a little bit about lots of things. Like I can sit and talk about the heavy metals and sargassum seaweed and different species of cucumbers and what happens if they are ranching in mangrove as opposed to coral reef. I can tell you about what happens if you put HDP and LDP plastics through the same machine. Can do this all at a kind of high level. We always bring in the experts to dive really deep, but all our team, we know how to hold our own in conversations with those experts.
And you know the questions to ask.
We know the questions to ask. And our role is to make sure that the entrepreneurs are completely supported to be able to, and they trust us to bring in the right know-how to realize their vision, which for all of us actually is a shared vision.
You just mentioned the role of this patient risk capital. What kind of capital do you provide to these companies?
Yes, and this was a question I didn't answer earlier on. We're going to work mostly with let's start with two instruments. So the fund is an equity fund, and we will invest equity and quasi-equity into the companies. A handful of the companies will use a demand dividend, which is essentially a revenue-based repayment. So rather than going for building the company and then selling it at the end, we will have these companies pay back to the fund out of free cash flow. And the reason for that instrument is twofold. The first is managing risk. So there's been two funds in the Pacific prior to ours, back in the 2000s. And the big learnings from those was that the market's not very liquid. It's not very easy to sell a company. So use self-liquidating instruments. So this demand dividend fulfills that function. Now we're using a demand dividend specifically for companies which are community owned and cooperatively owned. And the idea for this came through very long and deep discussion with owners. The owners of these cooperatives are typically indigenous Italke Fijians, and this is a statistic that I only learned recently. So indigenous Italke Fijians are around about 60% of Fiji's population, yet they only contribute to around 10% of the GDP. So they've been really excluded from economic contribution. So for them to own a company is a very new concept. A lot of the people in the communities we work with haven't even kept records. So totally new. So when we sat with them to really vision What are the companies that you want? And the reason we're working with these communities as well is they have very large land holdings. So this is actually worth spending a little bit of time on, because it's a very different situation in the Pacific in terms of Indigenous land ownership. Usually Indigenous people around the world are minorities, but in the Pacific they're not. They're the majority. And Fiji has a really fantastic land tenure system, and something like 87% of the country is owned by Indigenous.
Oh, nice.
And then they have the traditional fishing rights of all of the inshore reefs. Although the government owns the inshore reef, but Itauke have traditional fishing rights. They don't need licenses. So when we started working with these communities who had these business concepts, and the sorts of business concepts are, for example, a sea cucumber company, or the company I described with the sargassum seaweed and the ecotourism and fishing outside of the reef. When we started visioning with them, we said, where do you see this company in 5 years? And then it became, where do you see it in 10 years? And then it became, where do you see it in 25 years? And it was a surprise maybe a surprise to me more than my colleagues. But, I come from this world of people want to sell their businesses maybe after 10 years.
Right.
They want to own their companies for the long term. They want their children, they want their grandchildren to own them, because these people are of the land, and they're not even stewards over the land. Pacific people see themselves as part of the earth, part of the process of earth. So these are not businesses that are just going to be sold. So yes, so this is why we created the demand dividend, so that during the lifetime of the fund, the companies could buy back the shares from the fund, and then this puts us and them in this really fantastic alignment. We obviously need to see the money come back into the fund. They want these companies for the long term, and so we work really hand in hand, almost like co-owners, different co-managers and co-owners. So this is one instrument. We're also using redeemable preference shares. So we also found another trend where if there was a family-owned company, so a much smaller family rather than a big cooperative, these Indigenous companies that I talk about, the smallest one we're working with has 46 members. The largest one is going to have over 2,000. So these are much bigger than normal family company. But we do have SMEs, for example, the waste management companies. We're seeing these as being owned by usually families and multi-generational, so often started by the grandfather or the father, and now it's the younger generation who are there and really thinking about sustainability and regeneration. These companies typically want to own them at the end as well. So for this, we're looking at redeemable preference share. But then we do have a couple of companies, 3 companies currently in our pipeline where trade sale is something, yes, they're thinking about this, or an IPO, and they already have pathway to IPO. Really? Yeah, I know. Everyone, when we say this, everyone's like, really? Yes, yeah. So we have one company that we're working with where the family who own that company, they have a fund which is traded on the stock exchange, a property portfolio. So there is a pathway to IPO for that aquaculture company. So while I say it's nascent, it's not as nascent as maybe I make it out to be. It is. We definitely do have some mature mature businesses and some mature entrepreneurs who are able to, who we don't need to do such deep training with in order to work out, what the right instrument is.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess part of the nascent is also the fact that they have access to bank loans, they have access to your options, right? But there isn't like a vibrant financial system where you can you can shop around and ask like 15 investors,
No, exactly.
right, for
There's
terms.
yeah, there's not, which I guess makes it quite nice for us. But having said that, there are a number of fund managers who are present in the region. So there, I think there's 6 fund managers. And the really nice thing there is we are all collaborating with each other. And when I talk about this in kind of the global north, people are a bit shocked. They're like, why are you talking to them? They're your competitor. It's like, there's no room for competition. Like the Pacific needs so much investment. And so we need to not be muscling each other out. You know, we need to work together. So we are collaborating with another fund who is currently raising as well. We're like, who's going to get to first close first? And we plan to do one of our first investments together. We'll co-finance it together, and we'll come in with a bigger piece of the equity. They'll come in junior equity to us, but together we will raise enough to bring in debt co-financing. So and then this enables a $20 million investment with, you know, with that relationship.
Yeah,
so
which wouldn't be unlocked if everybody was just out for their own
exactly.
stake, right?
It wouldn't. And then, you know, we each couldn't invest in individually because it would be, you know, we'd be pushing our exposure limits. So I think, yeah, again, like, you know, like, as I was saying in the beginning, we have an opportunity to do things differently.
I wonder, and particularly for those listeners who are also doing something unconventional or who may have big, bold dreams and are facing skepticism, I wonder how you are dealing with any resistance or skepticism or backlash in what you're doing. Because what I, hear is your vision is so much bigger than that of most investors or fund managers. Your horizon is much more long-term. Your thinking is more holistic. And it's such a unique ecosystem. How, does it, for example, land when you speak to investors around the world? You mentioned that your opening line is already, where this is what we do and kind of take it or leave it in a way, or are you, are you aligned with what we're trying to do? But I wonder more broadly whether it is being kind of unique in what you do, or also just simply the challenges of trying to solve such big issues. How do you deal with any setbacks or skepticism? What keeps you motivated?
This is a very big question. I mean, there's multiple things. I think the first one is really giving thanks and paying gratitude to the country and the region that's given my family a home for such a long time. This means a lot. So I think just that gratitude. My animals. So I don't share this often, but I think one of the big motivating factors for me is really caring for animals, because they don't have any sort of voice at all, and humans are animals too, of course. So this really helps me when, particularly when I'm feeling quite lonely, because it can feel very, very lonely. And I don't mean just for me personally, but also for our team. Kanchan, who is our director of regenerative impact, she has this, I think, very, very vivid analogy, which is, she talks about it sort of being this black void out there, and that we're holding like this little light. And she says that we just have to keep looking for other little lights out there and move towards those lights. And when you find those lights, then the light gets stronger. And I think for us, definitely meeting the 2X global community was that. In fact, I remember the first day of our accelerator program in person in Singapore, and I think none of the men in the 2X team were allowed. It was like women only in this room. And I was very close to tears, because I had never felt in that kind of like environment where it's safe to be here. And so So I think finding people who you really can connect with and share alignment with, this keeps me going. And we played a fun simulation recently. So this was part of our stakeholder consultation, which is required by one of our potential investors. And so we brought our ecosystem together, our investees, our investors, and civil society, conservation organizations, government, and we had this 3 days together where I mean, we were very intentional about the stage we set. We really wanted to honor Pacific people and Pacific experience. And it was basically first name basis only. It was like, okay, we're coming into this room. We're going to spend 3 days together. No one needs to talk about what they do. I mean, you know, it's not forbidden, but let's try and just be here as people, as humans. And we spent this 3 days playing the simulation together, interwoven with things like poetry and singing and prayer and these beautiful aspects of Pacific culture. And at the end of the 3 days, I felt like I could see the future. It was like, and the reason we brought everyone together was because it's like, wow, everyone, if we raise this fund successfully, we're going to be in this together for 10 years. So let's see what the next 10 years will be like, but let's condense it into 3 days. And yeah, I felt at the end like this is what the future will be. Like these diverse people coming from very different, you know, with very, you know, coming from very different experiences, very different backgrounds, and typically very different power dynamics, like economic power imbalances. And it felt like, no, all of this can actually dissipate because we can create this world that we want to live in.
Right.
So
yeah,
so
let's
this keeps
talk
me
more
going.
That's amazing. I want to come back to this, you know, kind of takeaways for listeners, but let's dive into the simulation first, because I think that's so unique. So you've collaborated with other partners from around the world to co-develop this fund manager simulation that is based on a similar simulation for fund managers in general, but you specifically tailored it for the Pacific. And then you brought together, as you just mentioned, like for 3 days, government, investors, entrepreneurs, scientists, like really a wild mix of different stakeholder groups. And as you said, you had them together and you went through the simulation. Can you talk a bit about what is that simulation for those who aren't familiar with fund manager simulations? And then what was perhaps, you know, the most surprising thing that you noticed when having all of those people in a room together in that experience for the first time?
Okay. So the fund manager simulation is developed by a company called Strategy Tools, who are based out of Norway. And essentially it is like a Monopoly board. It's a board game. I'm not allowed to call it a game. It is like a Monopoly board. You put it in the middle of a table in a big room, and all of the participants in the room break into teams. And essentially, you are in your team raising a fund. Everybody in the team has a different role, and you have a little plastic avatar, and you roll a dice and you move your avatar around this board, and you land on a square. And depending on the square you land on, you pull a card, and this creates a scenario for you. So you build, your investment thesis, your strategy. You start looking for investors. You start looking for deals, and you build you raise your money. You build your portfolio, and then things start happening because of the roll of the dice. So the first time we played this was in Singapore as part of our a fund manager accelerator for women with 2X.
And that was the general global simulation?
Yeah, it was. And we were the only Pacific Islanders in that room. It was an Asia Pacific cohort, and as usual, Pacific is never represented. So we were the only ones there, and the rules of that game were very financially determined or financially focused.
Was like more traditional venture
It
capital,
was.
private
It
equity,
it was.
looking for unicorns,
Yeah,
thinking about exits.
exactly. It was just exactly that, and I kind of very sheepishly, or maybe bravely, I'm not sure, but I asked Chris Rangan, who is the creator of the game. I said to him,
The non-game.
the non-game, the fun simulation. I asked him if he would consider making an impact version, and he said he would. And so 2 years later, we were able to raise the finance for that, and we created this impact version. So the impact version. Yes, you still have all of your financial metrics, but we now have this impact engine, and you score points according to 4 pillars: climate, gender, socioeconomic, and environment. And these 4 pillars are based on indicators that we, as a fund, are going to be tracking. So we brought everyone together, and we wanted to standardize things somewhat, because we wanted to be able to compare certain things. We wanted to also see, things like risk coming through, if we had some things a bit more standardized.
Right.
So we said to everyone, right, $50 million fund is what you're going to be raising. Has to be climate adaptation. Has to be gender equity. So this mirrors our fund, Matanataki Pacific Fund 1. But beyond that, you can choose your sectors, choose your thesis, just go for it. Now, I did get to choose who was in which team. So there was a bit of, a
Played a bit of architect.
Yeah, marionette, or puppeteer, puppet master. So I was quite specific about who I put with whom, because of course I know most of the people who were going to be there. And then we had 5 teams, and Matanataki had 1 person in each team as that team leader to guide everybody, because I was very concerned. We had a lot of reservations about the ability of the people who would come into the room and the skill level needed to play the simulation, because I know when I played it for the first time, I was completely lost.
I think that's something really worth double clicking on, right? Because if you hear like a board game, you're like, okay, maybe I can just play that, right? And bring people together. But it's actually extremely sophisticated.
Yeah, it
and
is.
the success globally of the simulation is that even kind of long-standing investment professionals realize through the simulation that there are things that they don't understand, and kind of in the last bit of detail.
Yeah.
So it really helps you. It's kind of next level learning, investing, and different aspects of the investment cycle.
It is exactly that. And so I was very, very conscious of this when we started developing the cards with Chris, and then I was trying to explain to him this sort of what I anticipated the skill level in the room would be. And also I didn't want to move too fast, because typically in the Pacific we move slowly. It's a very hot place, so we just all naturally move slowly. So I was very concerned, and Malachi, my co-GP, was probably more concerned. He was like, Jodi, this needs to be so simple. And what I can report is that the complexity was still there, but we had designed the teams in a way that we made sure that the fund manager, the person who was supposed to basically operate the spreadsheet and keep all of the data, was somebody very skilled. So every team had somebody who was in real life a fund manager. And then our Matanataki team leaders really guided the entire their entire team, and we made sure that the people who really had no experience of this at all were placed in roles that they had already had some exposure to. So, for example, the deal flow analysts typically were the entrepreneurs because, well, you guys have had the experience of being scouted.
Right.
So now you're going to go and do the scouting. So the outcome was really truly surprising to me. I had no expectations. I generally don't want to go into things with expectations, so I didn't have any. But if I had had expectations, it would have far exceeded them. Everyone got it to the point where, we were having kind of multiple conversations in the room, where we were all laughing at the fact that here I am sitting with my conservation colleague or a scientist who's never been in this world before, and we're talking about GPs and LPs and first closings and DPIs, and we're just laughing. And I think one of the things that for us meant a lot was the people who weren't the fund managers in the room. They said to us, we really had no idea what you do. Now we get it, and we think you're crazy, but we're also really grateful. Like, we can see why this is necessary.
Which is amazing if you think about government support and understanding, right? Because again, if you think about conventional investing, perhaps a government official would think, the private sector surely can figure it out, or this must be easy money, or, all kinds of myth, right? That perhaps you have in your head if you just think about Silicon Valley myth or something like that. So I guess also just like experiencing firsthand, even as part of a simulation, how difficult it is to raise a fund, all the different trade-offs, and then adding the Pacific lens, adding the impact that you want to achieve with finding investors, finding deal flow. I think that must have been really interesting.
Yeah, and I think the responses I appreciated the most came from the people in government, because typically the relationship between the government and the private sector is very, very difficult. There's a lot of mistrust. The private sector is always saying to government, you don't move fast enough. Government's always looking at the private sector saying, all you want to do is make money and ruin everything, like ruin the environment. So it really was a place for us to come together, really in trust. And we were also very, very cautious about setting up the right environment into the room. So I asked a facilitator to come and facilitate the event, basically to support, Chris, myself, Malachi. So Chris was free to run the game. I was free to be there kind of with people who needed whatever they might need. But then we had Jan holding the space for the room. And he is from Aotearoa, New Zealand. So he is Māori and Frisian ancestry. And so he has this really deep understanding of Pacific people. And he really very, very beautifully, firstly set the space. So when everyone arrived, the first thing we did was pray. The second thing we did was eat food together.
Oh, I saw the pictures.
And then the third thing we did was we sat in a circle together, and we had an ex-president, we had a deputy prime minister, we had investors, people who typically in this situation would hold a certain type of power, but there we all are sitting in a circle sharing about our personal lives. And when Jan kind of proposed to me this is the way he wanted to do it, I was feeling quite uncomfortable. And of course I was thinking too, investors are going to think this is really weird. Like, and because Jan was like, we're going to sing. Pacific people sing, so we are singing. And that made me the most uncomfortable. I was like, this is going to, we're going to have investors just thinking we're weird. And what is this world they've come into? But the way the space was held and the way that people were given opportunity to really just be present as human beings.
And be authentic, right? Not having to kind of cover their identity or their values
Exactly.
from investors.
Exactly. And just to say, I'm here with this poem, I'm going to share this poem, or I'm going to present for Fijian people, there is a whale's tooth. This is something that it's a sacred bond. And so somebody brought a whale's tooth. So I think to really, be who we are, and to not feel that, oh, we're coming into this world of finance, so we all have to be a particular way. It's like, no, finance needs to serve society.
Right.
And we're the citizens. So we just come as us, and work out how to be together. Like this concept of interbeing, I think, was really very key as well.
Yeah.
So I loved it, and we're going to play it every year. So with Chris, we will modify the game. We want to evolve it slightly to use this as a scenario planner with our entrepreneurs, with the pipeline, because often, especially when you're in the thick of your company, it's very, very hard to kind of look up to the horizon.
Because you're like hustling day by day, right? And like to zoom out and take the space and time to think more long term.
Yeah, so I think, if as a fund and a portfolio with the LPs coming as well, to actually scenario plan, because we are doing this together. So the game will essentially become a single fund with the real companies.
Great.
And then we will have cards that really, simulate what will happen if a Category 5 cyclone hits this country or this part of the country. How will it affect the waste companies? How will it affect the companies that have the seaweed? And then really get the entrepreneurs to start thinking about how they'll work with each other, but also how they'll respond when different things happen. So I'm really looking forward to that iteration.
It's exciting. Can we take a look at the simulation?
Yeah, we can. So these are our little avatars that we move around the board, and then the board itself is, let's see.
Yeah, amazing. I just love the design. That already really speaks to how it is different from the global simulation model.
Yeah, and I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this, because I wanted to show on this side, where we want to get to. And this is kind of currently where we are. I wanted to make sure we had animals represented in there as well. And then what we have here, they're called the Matani. And they are the people who do a dance. So they do a dance called the meke, and they teach the people who are watching how to do the dance. And then these people are starting to learn the dance, and they're starting to move across into this side. And this here reaches right back into our ancestry. So when we played the simulation, we spent a little bit of time talking about this image, because here, Matanataki as a word, in its broader sense, means action. But Matanataki means the people who do the dance to uplift the people. And all of the participants in this first simulation, they are Matanataki. We are this ecosystem of government, investees, LPs, fund managers, civil servants, scientists, conservation organizations, all working together. We are Matanataki. So I really love this image.
So beautiful. And I remember when you were developing it, because you mentioned that you added an impact frame to it. But I remember at the time, talking to Chris, and he said how difficult it was to create this, because adding an impact lens to a traditional venture capital private equity model is one thing. But he said this fit for purpose capital, there's so many different types of investments, such different fit for purpose capital models. Basically, it's not conventional debt, it's not conventional equity, there's a revenue share element to it. And then you have such a rich impact lens. There are just so many things.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just phenomenal that how you were able to build that simulation and that it worked in practice with these very diverse stakeholders.
Yeah, and the funniest outcome to me, and I'm still laughing about it. So of course we were capturing all of the data, and then at the end, the results are announced, and most of the funds. So I think every fund was able to raise close to 50. Most of them did between kind of 1 and 2x returns. The one that did the most, there was one fund that did 7x.
Wow.
But it had the lowest impact score, which was very, very interesting. And we still kind of need to analyze the data and see why exactly. I think it was because they were investing heavily into shipping, so they weren't able to have as much direct impact kind of on the ground. But the thing that made me laugh the most was that the majority of people on that team were from conservation organizations and they're scientists and like marine biologists. And you should have seen the look on their face when it was announced, yeah, you guys got the biggest financial return, but you also had the worst impact score. They were just like white, like sheets, like, really? So that was very, very funny and interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. I get a lot of questions from people in other small island states in particular. So like, let's say the Caribbean, but also I'm thinking about small island states in the Indian Ocean, for example. And I think a lot about this idea of cross-learning and knowledge exchange. And I know that's something that has also been on your mind. What can other small island development states or also more broadly nascent systems learn from your experience, from that approach of being authentic and really building for the people rather than building for international capital, for example? And perhaps also in relation to the simulation, is that something that could be adapted to those other ecosystems?
Yeah, I think that the experiences of island people is very much the same all over the world. I haven't been to too many islands and other places, but the ones that I have been to, I mean, the islands look very similar. We have very similar histories, usually colonized. So, ex-colonies, lot of sugarcane everywhere, sargassum problems. I mean, we really do face the same things. So I think there is, there's a very big opportunity for us to share. And, already we're doing, and it's very small, but, things like the Caribbean has a sargassum problem. It's slightly different to ours. Ours is growing, as a kind of growing in the reef problem, whereas their sargassum is floating in from somewhere else. But we still have this resource that could be used for certain things, and I think there's a lot of cross sharing that can be done in terms of what are the sorts of businesses we're investing into, the problems that we want to solve for the countries, turning these problems into solutions for the countries. And this is a really important thing, because I think the typical model is people coming from the outside with a solution looking for a problem, and it just can't be done that way. It's like, we know what our problems are, let us solve our problems. So I think whenever I get the opportunity to sit and share and exchange with people from islands, I do say to them, just create your own vision, and then look at what you need to achieve that vision. And where you don't have the know-how, where you don't have the capacity, the ability, bring it in, hire it in. Don't let it come in and dictate what your vision is. And I think this is a total turning upside down of the model, because I think as ex-colonies, we're used to foreigners coming in and kind of saying, this is the way things are going to be done. But it's like, and we're coming in with the money, and we're coming in with all the know-how.
With the power,
Yeah, and with all the power. It's time to not do that anymore. And it's time to say, this is what we want. And you know, for me, particularly for Pacific Islanders, and I don't know so much about people, you know, the cosmologies and the spirituality and the belief systems of other island people, but certainly for Pacific Islanders, when I look at their relationship to the land, being part of the land, you're part of the process of the earth. This to me is what needs, this sort of relationship needs to lead us out of the crisis that we're in, because when you have that sort of relationship to your ecosystem, you're not going to over extract from it. You're not going to harm it. So I think yeah. Actually, there's this beautiful poem. I can't remember Teresia's last name, but this poem is about islanding the world. And that island people should really teach the rest of the world how to live and how to be, because we are used to living on these places with very finite resources.
Right.
And, you know, what else is Earth but an island in a solar system? Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So your advice to other nascent ecosystems, especially small island states, is cross-stakeholder collaboration to really build your vision, and then to look for what you need for those little lights out there, rather than having somebody with a solution coming in and dictating what it should look like.
And exactly that. And don't use language that is not your language. The number of buzzwords that I hear out there, you know, if I'll go and sit in a village and someone in this village will be talking about nature-based solutions. It's like, that's not your language. You speak with your voice. And this, I think, is the authenticity that you were speaking to earlier. You know, we know what our issues are. We know how we want to live. We know what our relationship is to each other and to the land, to the ocean that we are so lucky to call home. Speak with our words.
Right.
Yeah.
What can others do who are not from those islands, who are coming from the outside, to say, perhaps impact investors or entrepreneurs or people who want to support that vision that the islands set for themselves? How can they avoid falling into the trap of coming with their great solutions and, you know, kind of nudging the local ecosystem to take up those solutions? Like, how can we avoid stepping into that trap? And what supportive role can people play when they're not from those ecosystems?
This is a very, very good question. I think any outsider should always come in and deeply listen. I think to have an ability to deeply listen and to not judge and to not come with preset ideas, and to be able to, over time, see what role you can play. We have this really wonderful tradition, I guess, in the Pacific, or particularly in Fiji. It's called talanoa, where you sit for hours and you talanoa and you talk, and it's usually done with kava, which is a drink made from a root. It really relaxes everybody. This idea of deeply listening really happens in these sessions, and it is so different to the kind of, right, you've got an hour of my time and pitch to me really, you've got a minute of my time, pitch to me really quickly.
An elevator.
Yeah. So I think this deep listening is something, and I'll speak from the Western side of me now, because I'm half European on my father's side. We come from these very rigid systems of thinking and training. And can you let go of that, or some of it, coming into a new space? And the talanoa is a really great place to do this, because, you know, we don't know everything. We should never know everything. We should all give each other the time and space to really think, to let things percolate. So in a Talanoa session, so I'll give an example of when I first did a Talanoa. So I was asked to come and present. I'm a fund manager coming to you as a community. I hear you have a business. I'm going to share with you what I do. And this session ended up being 8 hours. And it went until past midnight. And people came and went from the room. And what I loved about this is that 6 hours after I had spoken about something, someone turned to me and said, "Oh, can I ask you a question about that thing you told me 6 hours ago? Because I've been thinking about it and I didn't know how to ask the question before, but I think I have a question now." I think we need more of this. Because I think particularly in the West, we're supposed to just know everything, and we rush too quickly into things. So I've taken a very long-winded way of answering your question, but I think coming from the outside, listen deeply and see how much of yourself you can let go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great. I've collected a few questions for you from people from around the world. So let's perhaps just do a very quick lightning round to get to those.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I can do quick answers to questions.
One question is, who have been some of your mentors or role models on your journey, and what did you learn from them?
Okay, this is very easy to answer. Okay, so the mentor who's been with me the longest is a man called Ulf. He's in his 70s, and he has mentored me for about 15 years. He's a former turnaround person. He has taught me whenever I want to complain, whenever I'm really tired, whenever I'm over it, he says to me, "Jodi, the only easy day was yesterday." And he once sent me a picture. He trained in the military, and he sent me this picture. So in the military that he was part of, if you gave up your training, you would put your hat on the ground, you would ring the bell, and then you would leave the compound, and that was it. You had quit. And he sent me this picture of this long line of hats, like helmets on the ground with a bell. And there is this soldier walking past, exhausted, the last one standing, knowing that soldier has got to keep going. So
Wow, that's dramatic.
It's really,
no pressure, Jodi.
but this, I think often, when I'm feeling like, this is, because this is one of the most difficult things I've ever done. I mean, people in the film industry will tell you making a film is one of the most difficult things. This is way harder than that. So he reminds me just to suck it up and just keep on going. So
wow.
Yeah, and then the other person is Paula, who I met through 2X, and Paula had a very long history as an investor, as an institutional investor, and she has taught me about being patient and kind, really kind, deeply kind to everybody,
including yourself.
I'm learning that one, yeah. So that's the bit that she I think is still working on with me, because that's one of the hardest parts. Yeah.
So I have to ask, because you mentioned that one advice to just suck it up, which I can perfectly relate to. But I wonder, do you also have kind of to counterbalance that? Do you also have any, rituals or just daily habits for your own well-being, to kind of to keep going, not only kind of pushing beyond the limits, but perhaps also to rebalance and recharge?
Yeah, I do. So I sleep 8 hours a day, minimal every day.
Except at the moment.
Except at the moment, except when I'm traveling, which is why I don't like traveling so much. So sleeping, I practice Qigong. So I've practiced Qigong for many, many years. And I'm able to practice it just when I walk, anywhere that I walk.
Nice.
I've also recently been practicing an eating meditation, where you eat really slowly and where you put your utensils down as you chew. And when you do that, you consciously connect with Mother Nature and the earth and the ocean that's provided you with that food. So this, and also a walking meditation that I've learned very recently from Buddhist monastics from Plum Village.
Oh, great.
These are the things that are helping me through this really difficult time when, frankly, there's not an hour to go and do a Qigong practice.
Yeah.
But I can just walk, or I can eat my food and I can be meditating while I'm doing it. And also I read the Tao Te Ching. I keep a small Tao Te Ching on me, and it travels with me everywhere, which is I think one of the greatest books ever written.
What is it? Can you just say it maybe in a sentence or two for those who are not familiar with it?
So the Tao Te Ching is, I think it was the first book written in Chinese history, and it essentially contains sort of short. They're not even parables. Essentially, a very small book with, I think there are 80 different 81 very kind of short pieces about just how to move through the world. So the Tao is the way and the path, and it's really it's part of Chinese philosophy. So if ever I'm stuck on something, I'll just open a page and for example, the Great Way is easy, yet people prefer the side paths. Be aware when things are out of balance. Stay centered in the Tao. When rich speculators prosper, while farmers lose their land, when government officials spend money on weapons instead of cures, when the upper class is extravagant and irresponsible, while the poor people have nowhere to turn, all this is robbery and chaos. It is not in keeping with the Tao. So these are the sorts of passages that it has. Yeah.
We'll link some of those resources for our listeners below, because I think those are really great daily habits that people can integrate. How do you define fulfillment in your life, and what makes you feel like your work truly matters? I think you talked about, how your work matters, but maybe what does fulfillment and happiness in your life mean? A big philosophical question.
This is a huge question, and it's something that I try not to think too much about, which might sound strange. In Chinese medicine, if you're too excited or you're too joyful, that's being out of balance. And so for me, this idea of being really happy kind of is pushing into that realm. So maybe the way I would look at your question, although I guess my approach is that for me, I'm wanting, rather than for feeling fulfilled, I want to know that I'm moving through life feeling balanced. And how do I do that? Because often things do seem very extreme. I'm going to try and answer a question on fulfillment, because it is an important question. It's a very important question. I certainly want to feel like I've contributed to the society that I live in. And therefore, fulfillment for me means every day that I'm sure that I'm on a path which is leading towards the world that I want to live in, which I do get to see glimpses of every so often, whether it's, in certain parts of my island or with people I work with. Certainly I felt it at the end of the fun simulation with everyone there. Yeah, so I think it's, for me, fulfillment is just knowing that I'm continuing on a path of having some agency and being able to play some sort of role in delivering that.
Yeah. Okay, final question. If you could challenge the world to think differently about finance and impact, what's the first provocation you would give?
This is really easy. See the economy as a subset of the ecosystem. That's it. Simple.
Rather than the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah, ecosystem is always in the service of the economy, and it's not. We only have an economy because we have a planet. Yeah, that's my shortest answer
Love
so
it.
far.
Thank you so much, Jodi, for joining us all the way from Fiji and for sharing your knowledge and insights and for the really important work that you do. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
This feels like a good moment to share 3 Substack newsletters I genuinely look forward to. First, Lubascope by Luba Kasova. Luba writes social commentary with heart and facts, and she blends human stories with data and evidence in a way that leaves you more clear-eyed and more hopeful. We actually recorded an episode together for this podcast, and if you care about how narratives shape what society pays attention to, you'll love her work. Second, The Interweave by Marilla Menes. This one is philosophical, which I really love, and it's also extremely relevant. He sits at the crossroads of the economy, technology, and meaning, and writes about the big challenges of our time in a way that's deep, thought-provoking, and surprisingly practical. And third is First Followers by Conscious Futurist, a sharp contrarian read on impact investing, venture building, and innovative finance, with real nuance about incentives, values, and what better capitalism could actually look like in practice. If you're on Substack, go follow all 3. They're really worth your attention.
There's something inside of you that you cannot just stop. That my life is not calm, it's always fire.
I loved my corporate job, but I knew that I was suffocating.
I don't really feel represented. He turns around, looks at me and he says, "You are here for a reason. You belong." And this was life-changing moment. Ever since, I don't walk in rooms like this, I stand, like I'm present.
When I went to the bank to ask for a loan, it was welcome with a certain level of discovery. Nobody believes in it. I sold my house to invest in the office. You can only do it when you are crazy, when you are driven and when you are motivated.
I fell with my face on the floor like this, boom, hardcore falling. And I stood up.
The ugliest term in the world, it's called cash flow issues. But you cannot let your temporary cash flow issue to impact your long-term vision.
One of the main barriers that people have in being able to do something or create or be different than the majority is that they have a fear of what their neighbor is going to think about them. People also don't really care. And the understanding that people don't really care should make you free.